this is just a box that I got from Amazon. I'll have it linked, and got it on sale. I think paid about $25 for this one, and it's a decent weatherproof box. You can see here it's got the seal in it, and your mounting plate included at the bottom there. And just to give you a rundown on some of the other things that we're going to be using today as part of the build. So here from Falcon, we have a smart receiver, and that will drive generally about 800 pixels per channel, and that is at 40 frames per second. So, all told, you're looking at about 3,200 pixels on this smart controller. Then we have the power distribution board here, also from Falcon, and just going to use that so that we can power inject the tail end of those. Brought the reel out here, but this just came from Home Depot, perforated hanger strap for hanging electrical, and we're just going to use about an 8-inch strip of that will be used. I'll show you how to secure our power supply into the box there. We have a Hewlett Packard 1200 watt power supply here. You can get these for about $20 to $22 on eBay. And then from Parallel Miner, we have the breakout board here for that HP power supply. We're going to be using several of the PG9 glands, got those off of Amazon, as well as a waterproof gland for our network connection. So we'll have those, again, that's an Amazon product as well. So these are some of the major components we'll be working with today. And then finally, some of the other components that are going into our build today. We've got the female end of the X Connect that we're going to be using for our build today, and so those will be our pigtails going in. Also from Wired Watts, we have some heat shrink labels that we can put on to label our pigtails as they go into the box. And then finally, I'd actually picked these up on sale last year, but these are the vents from Bud Industries, the IPV 1115. This is the 2.5-inch opening, and this just, I don't really have a problem with boxes overheating here, but that gives some ventilation opportunity for the box as well. Just wanted to show you what I'm using to do the 2.5-inch hole for the vent over here. Just got a 2.5-inch hole saw, really made for wood, but it works great on plastic. And then just brought one in for an example here, but for these PG9 glands that are good for the X Connect pigtails, this is a 5/8 drill bit. Works perfect for the PG9 glands. You can kind of see them already installed there. And then I also have a 1-inch drill bit, and I'll show you what I'm doing for that. Now I'm going not for aesthetics here, but just for functionality. So are my holes nice and even and pretty? No, everything's just functional. But for one of the 1-inch holes, this is my weatherproof network gland here, and it fits into a 1-inch hole. And then these HP power supplies work off a standard computer power cord, and I didn't want to cut a perfectly good power cord just for the sake of routing it through into a box. So I do drill a 1-inch hole to feed the power cord through. And then I got this cool little kit here off of Amazon of various size grommets here. There we go. And you can see here it's a kit. It comes with a little razor knife that allows you to cut them as needed. But what I'm doing, and I grabbed a selection because I didn't know what I was going to need at the time. But I've used various sizes, but you can see here on the 1-inch hole, this makes for a nice little, pretty much weatherproof feed through of the computer power cord. And then I'll go ahead and hit this with a little bit of silicone just to finalize it off and keep the whole thing waterproof. So you saw the box without all the holes drilled out. I was going to take the time to film myself drilling holes, but yeah, 2.5-inch hole for the vent, 5/8-inch hole for the PG9 glands, 1-inch hole for the network adapter, and a 1-inch hole to feed through this power cord. Okay, everybody should know this, but this is your PG9 gland, and as I mentioned, I got these very reasonably priced. I think it was 40 of them for about $8 on Amazon. So they come with the grommet separately. So you just go ahead and put your seal over it here, and then as I mentioned, you got a 5/8 inch hole that you feed through, and then put your nut on the other side. Okay, so there we go. All the glands are in. Again, they're not all lined up straight, but they work. I've got 8 total. I'm going to do just the 4 channels off the smart receiver, and then I'm just going to have the one network cable coming in here. I am not going to daisy chain them, so just one coming in for communication, my power cord, but all these have been tightened on the back side, and just enough that they're snug in here, and that let me see if we can get it in there, that the rubber grommet is sealed and making it weatherproof. But if you over tighten these, then the grommet will kind of squish out. So tighten them enough that they're down and you've got good weatherproofing, but that you don't squish the seal out. So now we're ready to go. We've got our 8 PG9 glands in, we've got our power cord fed through, and again, it's largely weatherproof with that grommet that we've put in there, but I'll hit that with some silicone when we're done, and then finally our weatherproof network gland. Okay, switching cameras here and hoping that everything can still be seen. So we've got our panel out here, the mounting panel out of the back of the box, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mount our power supply. As I mentioned, we have this Hewlett Packard 1200 watt power supply. Got that off of eBay, I think $22 or $20. And then the breakout board, which came from Parallel Miner. I will link this in the video, and it's very simple. All you have to do is go ahead and slide the breakout board right onto the power supply, and you're ready to go. Make sure that we leave enough room for the power cord to go in at the back here, and because it's going to stick up a little bit, we don't want it jamming into the back of the box too bad. So there's the first 2 considerations, power cord and our mounting holes. Then the other considerations are where we're going to put the 2 boards that we're going to be working with. So these can very easily tuck right in here. We're right on the edge, but you can see that we can tuck the smart receiver right into there, and then we can come right behind it very easily and tuck in our power distro board as well. Okay, so you can kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like, how this is going to set up. You've got the power supply and the breakout board, you have your smart receiver, and then you have the power injection board. So super easy breakout. Now we'll look at mounting it. So what we have here, as I mentioned earlier, this came from Home Depot, but we have here the perforated hanger strap for hanging electrical items, and I took off about an 8-inch piece, and which is 10 holes is an easy way to count that on the strap. And so you're going to need one at the bottom to mount into the board. So we get this nice and straight across here, give it a bend, and that gives us our first one here. And again, that's going to go on the surface, and that's where our screw will go through to mount on the board. Then it's 2 holes high for the power supply, and you don't want to really bend it right in the middle here. You kind of want to be at just at the very top end of the hole there, so right about there, and we're going to bend again. Okay, so you've got nice kind of Z shape there, 2 shape, I don't know, S. But let me go ahead and pick up the power supply here and show you that, see, that works very well right there. It's too high, and you can see that's basically flush right there and goes over. Okay, so then we're going to do the same on the other side. You can see where that one's going to need to bend, again, right at the top of the hole. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Right about there. Go ahead and bend that over. And then once again, we're going to bend at the bottom here where that is going to go onto the board. And there we have our little bracket there that we're going to use to hold the power supply. Okay, so we've built our bracket here that's going to go over the power supply, and you can see it lays pretty nicely over it. And I went down and picked up these screws. These are from just local Ace Hardware, but I don't have an exact size, apologies. But you can see they're just a coarse threaded screw and a countersunk head, and I found that these work really well to hold this down, and they are obviously going to penetrate the board, the mounting board, and come through the back side, which is fine. It's not going to stick through enough that it's going to interfere with the board to the extent that you can't mount it. Okay, so we'll make sure this is straight. We want to make sure that wherever we're mounting this, it doesn't interfere with where we're going to mount the two boards. Okay, but just super simple and straightforward. You'd be surprised as you cinch this down, it will actually end up holding the power supply very nicely. But you're just cutting right through into the plastic of the mounting plate here, and these will cinch in nice and tightly. Okay, around to this side, same thing. And yes, for the moment our power supply is moving around, but here in just a second it's going to tighten it down actually pretty nicely. Okay, so we're a little crooked there, but the great part is you can maneuver this. So in several projects that I've done, I've ordered my parts from the really great folks over at Wired at Watts, and each time I do, I get a bag of hardware, and of course you can always order the bags of hardware as well as needed. But this is what I'm using out of their hardware bags to mount these both the boards here. So we've got our spacer, we have screw, and then we have a lock style nut that goes on there as well. So you can see that I've already gone ahead and mounted, so you can see what it looks like, the smart receiver there, and again works out very nicely against the power supply here. We have plenty of room to get in there and do everything we need to do. Okay, so we're mounted and ready to go there. Holes don't line up always exactly on these style mounting boards, but certainly close enough. This is nice and solid. It's secure, and it's off the mounting strip and away from the power supply. You can kind of see, but I've already pre-drilled the holes for the power injection board as well. The screws are a little bigger than these square style holes here. You know, yes, you could use a style of screw that just threads right into that, but I like to feed through and have the nuts on to make sure they're not going anywhere. As I mentioned, you can see where we mounted the power supply that those screws did protrude some, but they don't protrude more than the standoffs for the board, so that protrusion is not a problem. Okay. So really straightforward with these. We're just going to feed these screws through from the back and put our spacer on. Usually try and do one end at a time. So we'll feed both of these through and put our spacer on, and then go ahead and feed our board over. And for the moment, we're obviously just going to put the nuts on loosely until we get everything fed through. And of course that one doesn't want to start, it wants to be problematic. There we go. Okay, so we got that one started, and this one, and then we'll come down to the far end, do the same thing down here, and with the far end being loose, they're not going to back through because the nuts are on it, but it does allow us the flexibility then to work with these on this end. So we'll go ahead and lay that one up there, number 3. And go ahead and feed through number 4 here. Put our spacer on. And then we can drop that right in. It does so happen that the holes for this power injection board lined up nicer than the holes for the smart receiver. But, you know, again, they're both fine. So we'll go ahead and get these started. And then I won't bore you with waiting while I'm tightening these up, but just so you know, it is a, for these nuts, it's a 5.5 millimeter drive, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pause, tighten these up, and then we'll have a look. Okay, so we got the power injection board tightened down. So you can see now that generally speaking, we're pretty well set, okay? We've got our 1200 watt power supply on here. We'll go ahead in a second, tie our wires in. We've got our smart receiver. Again, this should be good for about up to 3200 pixels. And then we have our power injection board so that we can power inject on the back end of those. Since we only have 1200 watts, we obviously don't have enough power here to drive a full 3200 pixels, but we'll talk about my experience with the power here in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and get some wire together so that we can go ahead and tie our power supply into these two boards. Again, it's a 14 gauge, 100 foot. I've been able to use this for just about everything. So again, I'll put the link to that. We've tied into the power supply distro board here. Super simple. This whole side is ground. You can see here they've colored it black and yellow to make it straightforward. But I got my grounds tied in here and my hots tied in here. Board's clearly marked and colored, so it's kind of hard to do that wrong. Okay, that's what makes these breakout boards from Parallel Miner so incredibly perfect for doing something like this. So we got our wire strippers here. Go ahead and strip. And just a fair warning, if you haven't worked with these boards before, you know, all of these things they're just soldered on, and it's really easy. You can maybe see, I'll rotate this, you can see that the whole fixture can move when you're trying to work with it. So key thing is make sure that you use your hand, your fingers, something to help kind of hold as you're working this, so you don't end up, as you're tightening this down, you don't end up ripping the fixture right off the board here. Okay, so what I normally do is go ahead and feed my wire in and start tightening it down. Once I've got it down enough that I know the wire is going to be held, but I'm not putting any tension on the fixture, then I'll let it go and feed the other side in. Same thing here. I'll go down to the wires holding itself, and I don't have to hold it in anymore. Then I'll counter with my hand and hold this thing in place to make sure I don't want to, as my dad used to say, I don't want to gorilla grip that down, but nice and snug. But again, you want to kind of work your fingers with this to make sure you don't inadvertently rip this thing off the board while you're tightening your screws down. Okay. Don't need to watch me do both of those. I'm going to turn off for a second, get the power connected to the other one. We'll be right back. Okay, so we've got our 2 units powered now. You can see here again we've got 14 gauge wire that is going to go ahead and go from our power distro board off our power supply. I got 12 volts going up to the smart receiver, and now 12 volts going up to the power distro board and or power injection board. And again, same thing here. As I was tightening these down, I made sure to hold this with my hand while I was tightening the screws, just to be sure that we don't end up ripping this baby off the board while we're tightening the screws down. So we'll get this in the box and finish getting it together. Okay, so we have our box back in the picture here, and as I mentioned before, we've got to go ahead and plug this regular computer power cord into that HP power supply there. Go ahead and get this out of the way, and go ahead and lay our board in here. It should fit in very nicely. So let me go ahead and put a couple screws in here. Actually, I'm going to put all 4 screws in the corners. That would tilt this up for a better look. Okay, we've got it secured in the box. We've got our screws in each of the 4 corners. Like anytime you put screws in, make sure to start them all and keep them loose until you're sure that you've got all 4 threaded. Then go ahead and tighten them down. You can see here our power cord is going into the HP power supply, but it's not like unnecessarily bent or crimped or anything. It's just nicely in there. Plenty of room in our box. We've got our 12 volt lines going up, so everything is in and mounted. And we've got this network gland right here. Really doesn't matter which network port it goes into, but I usually put it into number 1 network gland in. So now it's time to go ahead and get all of our pigtails in and get those secured. So the data ports here on the smart receiver, again, we've got these great little heat shrink style markers here. These are from Wired Watts as well. These are the female ends of the X-Connect pigtails here. So we'll go ahead and take that, and of course start by taking our marker. We'll heat shrink these later by just opening it up and sliding that over the pigtail. My tendency is to go with the lower glands to the closest board. Okay, so I'm going to go from this lower gland right here to the smart receiver board. You just kind of have to loosen the gland up, make sure that it's kind of unscrewed, and then feed your pigtail through like so. All right, and then we'll go ahead and grab the connector off of the board here. These just pull right out, and we're going to go ahead and tighten these up, but we're going to take a break, pull all 4 of these, and be right back. Okay, so we've gone ahead and pulled our connectors so that we can go ahead and use those to get our pigtails together. I'm just going to do the first one here, and you'll be able to see, but this is port 1 here on this end, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we've already marked this one with a marker here that says this is going to be number 1. So that's the one we'll go ahead and connect that to. And you'll see marked on the board very clearly, voltage is this side, data in the center, and ground on the far side. Okay, and these go on like so. So the screws that are on the back will be facing the power supply, and it's hard to find sometimes a screwdriver that's a good size for these, but you can kind of see, hopefully see as you loosen these, that they are opening up and getting in there to where you can insert your wire. They do kind of float, so you're going to be better off holding it kind of downwards where that can float on down. Okay, and then hopefully if you got decent pigtails, the wires are already going to be tinned with solder, so that way you don't risk the wire spreading or you know, an individual strand of the wire maybe migrating out and into the connection next to it. So we're just going to take that, going to feed it down in there to where hopefully you don't have any of the wire showing. You can go all the way down to where the insulation is down in there, and that will also keep things from touching one another. Want to get these nice and tight. A lot of people have found they do tend to loosen up over time. Not sure what the deal is with that, but without going crazy, do the best that you can to go ahead and get these wires in here and these tightened down nicely so that they don't migrate out at some point in the future. And again, the board, if you get lost, it's screen printed on the board which one is your ground, which one is your data, and which one is your hotline. So it doesn't really take anything to remember which one goes where. So we got those in, but you can see here we have the insulation pretty much all the way down to where that goes in, so that we don't have any risk of the open wires touching. And once you have that secured, then you can go ahead and plug right into where it goes. Again, this is marked as port number 1. That is port number 1, so we're in there. And then all you're going to do is take your gland and tighten it. And you'll notice once it's tight, you've got strain relief. You can't slide this in and out of the box anymore. Like it's firm, it's holding it. So we'll go ahead and now that that's secured, once we get them all in, we'll heat shrink these. But we'll pause here and go ahead and get the other 4 of these in. Okay, so we've got that finished. We've gone ahead and secured our wires into each of the ports for the smart controller. So again, ports 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have our pigtails marked 1, 2, 3, 4. As I mentioned, we'll hit that with a heat gun. I know some people use a lighter as another way to heat shrink. It's up to you. We're going to move over to the power distro board, which we use for power injection. Now, I know some people will power inject more out of a box than the number of ports they're using to actually drive data. I don't. Since I'm using 4 ports here for the smart receiver, I'm only going to power inject those 4. So out of the 8 power injection points, I'm only going to use 4. Okay. The other thing that I do is you'll notice that for the power injection, these only have 2 areas to put wires into instead of 3. That's obviously because there's no data going into this. All we're getting out of these is power and ground. Now what I do to avoid data lines touching, or I'm not sure that it would really be a problem, but I just like to be sure. I go ahead and trim mine when I'm doing these power injections. I leave enough that if I ever need to use this and tie into the data line at some point in the future, I've got enough wire here that I could splice it. But for the most part, I just want it out of the way and not touching anything. I'm only going to use these 2 wires, power and ground. Okay. Same thing here as it was below. You'll see it's screen printed on here, ground and voltage, so you'll know which ones to tie into. And same thing as before, we're just going to feed through our gland, and then we're going to attach it to this. Now, I did not obviously put a marker on here to say which port it's going into because it doesn't matter. This is just 12 volts of power straight up. It doesn't matter which port it is. All I care about is that when I tie into these that are unmarked, I'm getting 12 volts out of them. So no need to mark these. So we'll go ahead real quick. I'll shut down so you don't have to sit here and watch this, but I'm going to go ahead and tie in our 4 pigtails for power into the power injection board, and we'll be right back. Okay, so just finishing out our video here. Once again, this is the end of our inexpensive box build here. Smart receiver that we can use to drive, again, depending on the power supply you've got, as many as 3,200 pixels off the one smart receiver, though I won't be driving quite that many. Forgot to mention, we don't seem to have a problem, or I have not had a problem with my boxes overheating here, but that will take, I believe it's an 80 millimeter fan. You can find 80 millimeter 12 volt fans on Amazon really cheaply. I think you get, maybe 10, 12 bucks for a fan. So, as I mentioned, again, we're looking at eBay for the power supply here, the HP server power supply, about 15 bucks for the breakout board from Parallel Miner. And again, try to get that over where you can see, but it monitors the voltage actively right there. This breakout board makes it very simple to route your wire over and give power to your boards. We are running 14 gauge wire to run the power from the power supply over to the 2 boards here. As I mentioned, I will only power inject as many ports as I'm driving here. So since I'm only driving 4 ports, I'm only going to power inject 4 ports. So I have our 1 data line coming in. I tend not to daisy chain my smart receivers, though you could with the other network port there. But we do have the 1 network port here that will be our incoming / outgoing line, our communication line. So yeah, we've taken a box that you saw at the beginning here that was pretty empty and pretty straightforward. We've drilled it and put our PG9 glands in here. We have our weatherproof network gland. We got these heat shrunk down, so we've got our markers to tell us which port is which. And again, anything that's not marked, of course, is just 12-volt power, which is fine. Makes it easy. Yeah, inexpensive box. Again, you're looking at maybe $130 to put the whole thing together. Really cheap to do it yourself, really easy to do. Pigtails are $1, $1.25 a piece. A lot of this, you just have to do your research and get your parts from various places. But once you've got it closed up, you got the stainless steel latches here. And again, you could put a small lock through here if you needed to keep somebody from getting into it. But there you go. It's that all told was about an hour, and got a box built, and you can use this smart receiver to drive a bunch of pixels. So again, I'll link everything that I purchased in the description, and if you've got any questions, you're welcome to shoot them my way. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thanks so much. More to come. Take care.